Well, the transfer market has been open and closed and open again through July. Plenty of stuff going on. So we are going to take our first dip into what has been going on in the EFL Championship in terms of ins and outs and try and get everything all set for, well, a couple of key deadlines coming up, as in June the 30th. There might be PSR related action with people wanting to do deals before then. And then, of course, July the 1st, we'll definitely get announcements around that because that is the traditional date that football contracts tend to run from. So let's try and get into this. Usual disclaimers at the start of this. I'm going to use Transfermarkt as my source, which I've got on the other screen. So any disagreements on information there, you can write them a strongly worded letter. Leave me out of it. If any deals get done today, let's completely tell you what we're doing. It's 20 past 10 in the morning on Tuesday. So if deals get done today, obviously they won't be included. We're just talking about done deals rather than transfer rumours. We might mention a few transfer rumours as we go. And if you want to get really emotional and het up and argumentative about transfer fees, honestly, I'm going to be completely blunt. I've done this for years. I don't care. Unless you've got the contract and the banking information in front of you, I genuinely don't care. We'll just go with what Transfermarkt are kind of reporting. And let's be very honest about it. I don't really know. You don't really know. So let's not argue about it. Right, let's work our way through the EFL Championship. And we'll try and go from kind of top to bottom in terms of ranking. And we will start with the Year 1 parachute teams. And the general rule of thumb with the Year 1 parachute teams is, can you manage what is often a very churny first summer after Premier League relegation? You're probably going to have to sell a couple of big ticket assets. And then can you then trade sensibly enough so you're not completely resetting and you can still use the power of the squad that you had in the Premier League, in theory, plus the power of the parachute money that you're going to get, which is obviously highest in the first season. So it is a massive advantage, obviously, we say each and every year, but it does have to be managed cleverly by these clubs. You can't just accept every offer and bank all your cash and completely start over. It needs to be a bit more sensible than that. Let's start with Leicester, where I assume if I scroll down here, absolutely nothing is going to have happened. They've just got a few loan players returning. Although I suppose Chowdhury and Suter are two of them. And you can build a Championship 11 with those two in, can't you? But obviously the big news in terms of Leicester is EFL stuff and points deductions and sanctions and whatnot. And it feels like we're kind of doing a lot of waiting when it comes to Leicester in terms of maybe a possible sanction being given. We don't entirely know what's happening with the management there. I can see one big out there, Jamie Vardy. I mean, that's obviously the end of an era, but moving on into next season, I suspect it might be quiet at Leicester for a little while until we know exactly what's happening, what the lay of the land is going to be next season in terms of possible sanctions management. And then I'd imagine it'll be that normal case of you lose a couple and you try and ride out your squad and build it as best you can. Ipswich Town, well, we have had one of the big ticket outs, and I mentioned at the top of the video it was open and it was closed and it was open again. And that first opening of the transfer window saw Liam Delap go to Chelsea, didn't it? The fabled release clause that everybody knew about was met, and Delap's obviously already playing for Chelsea in that tournament over in the United States that I have not watched 1 second of, so I can't tell you anything more than that. So Delap's gone, Harness has gone on a free, Burgess has gone on a free, Luongo out as well has been released. So a big sense at Ipswich that the glory 2 years under Kieran McKenna and that amazing group of players that took Ipswich from 11th in League One, bang, 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 into the Premier League. It's a bit of a reset. One thing Ipswich did do well last season was traded in such a way that they come down with. And look, some of these may be sold, one or two at least, given my thoughts on parachute teams. But with the arrivals of Dara Roche, Jacob Greaves, maybe Ben Johnson, Connor Townsend, central midfield needs looking at, obviously. And then the likes of Philogene and Clark have been stars at championship level as well. So has Smodics. Liam Delap needs replacing. Good luck with that at championship level, but you do your best, don't you, in the central midfield. So I would expect Ipswich will get busy and may well even be able to spend before they sell. But you might expect a Leif Davis, a Dara O'Shea, Amari Hutchinson, dare I say, could be on the way out. Southampton feels a little bit like with the yo-yo at Southampton that the big asset base that was cashed in on, who was it? Livramento, Ward-Prowse, Lavia, was it? They sold massive amounts of, well, it just named 3 players, but massive amounts of money came in last time. Doesn't feel like there's a massive, potential to shift out players because obviously they did it 2 years ago. Samuel Amiu has gone apparently out to Strasbourg, says Transfer Mark, which is Liam Rossini's club. Championship check-in a couple of years ago, Sam Parkin saw his debut and really liked him down at Plymouth. So it's a young player gone. We've got one in, Joshua Kwasi, 20-year-old centre-back from Hoffenheim for €3.5 million, it says. So I'd assume he's come in to play in the Championship. I know they've just come from the Premier League, but if you can drop a few million quid on a centre-back, most of the league can't. We know the lay of the land here. Not entirely sure what we'll see from Southampton then, because I don't think, as I say, there's going to be massive outs. I assume there'll be 1 or 2, but I'm not expecting huge money coming in. But are the books all right? Maybe Saints fans can let me know down there in the comments in terms of what PSR positions. I wouldn't assume it's terrible. Is it in terms of Southampton? I'd assume that was all wiped clean with those names I mentioned there. So maybe we'll be allowed to build a squad there. So I'd be reasonably optimistic if I was a Saints fan. That might be the most stable there of the 3 in terms of Ipswich might bring more people in, but again, that's churn and those players need to be dropped in. And Leicester does feel the most chaotic of the 3. So, let me know your thoughts on each of the Year 1 parachute teams. Let me try and change the slideshow. Miserable failure. I was going to do both at the same time. Hello, pumpkin. And pick up my drink and have a swig. As we move on to the playoff losers. Now, traditionally, the playoff losing position has not been good in terms of transfer churn the following season, with the general change in English football with the kind of chasms money-wise, that you used to be able to lose in the playoffs and continue building and it not be this kind of asset stripping horrible summer where your players all left for pastures new and you had to kind of start all over again. Does feel now it's far, far more difficult to manage. And, I think we've got 3 different examples, so let's get into it there. Sheffield United, is fascinating for many reasons, because this is the first transfer window under the new ownership, who have removed Chris Wilder and brought in Ruben Sellés, with lots of talk of data, AI recruitment stuff, which I had some very sarcastic emails and comments from the Sheffield United fans about. Maybe they were still smarting about one of their own, Chris Wilder, going and Sellés coming in. We have seen, excuse my pronunciation here, Ehije Ukaki, who's come in, a Nigerian winger from, where is that? Plovdiv, Bulgaria, for 600,000. That's probably a project, but the team that finished 3rd in the Championship last season is going to be nothing like the team that Sheffield United go with this coming season. Lots of loans. Sutar and Gilchrist for the start of the season were definitely mainstays. Raksaki I really like, but kind of didn't end the season in the team because Ben Brereton Diaz did, and none of them will be there. Harry Clark, well, he kind of came and got injured, didn't he? And Hamza Chowdhury ended up playing at right back. Rob Holding as well was there. That's 7 lone players that played a fair amount of football that aren't going to be there. But I suppose the big names are, let's try and do in order of significance, Gus Harmer, Anel Ahmedhodzic, and maybe Mike Cooper as well. The keeper was brilliant last season. I suspect they'll hold on to Cooper. But would you be at all surprised? I think Ahmedhodzic's final year of contract as well. So this is going to be tricky for Sellers to manage. Although he's just managed Reading and Hull in far more chaos than this. There's first world problems when you'll actually probably be able to spend some of the year 2 parachute money. And, I mean, I think Ahmedhodzic, like I said, is last year of contract, but Gus Harmer's worth a pretty penny, isn't he? And, I mean, always shows up in the playoffs, doesn't he? Did for Coventry as well. So you'd imagine there'll be something to spend, but I think it's another new team virtually for Sheffield United. Although I will say, Sidi Peck, Ollie Arblaster, Femi Sariki, Cooper you can include in there in terms of who can you build youth, youngsters around that team. Tom Cannon's young and he came in last season. Andre Brooks as well. So could get a really exciting young Sheffield United team with some additions. That'd be the best case scenario, wouldn't it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, Blades fans. Coventry were very much victims to what I was describing, as in, particularly if like Coventry, you kind of surge upwards from League 2, League 1, up the table to the playoff final where they lost a couple of years ago. And it was Gus Harmer and Victor Gyökeres who, you know, are going to be linked with transfers this summer. And Gyökeres massively, you know, Manchester United links there. And that team then had to be rebuilt. But I've liked what Coventry have done over the last couple of seasons. And it feels like they've built the asset base gradually with, say, Thomas and, you know, like Dovin, the goalkeeper, Van Erik. I really like the fullback. You've still got Sheff in there. Grimes was added as well. Haji Wright, Ellis Sims, Sakamoto. They've sold 2 players a couple of years ago and built a hell of a good championship team. But they've got to keep trading, I think. If they're following the Brentford example, Brentford were never afraid to sell, were they? And I do wonder whether, I think Haji Wright got an injury, someone was saying in the comments in the Q&A the other day on internationals. So we'll see how he's holding up. But you do wonder whether someone will take Ben Sheff, maybe, or Van Erik, or Wright. But I would trust Coventry to keep on recruiting. Who have they brought in? Miguel Angel Brau, who's a left-back, Spanish player on a free transfer. So don't know a lot about him. But you'd imagine Coventry, there might be some significant sale, maybe one, and then a few players come in again, and they'll continue the kind of, everyone wants to do what Brentford did and have, you know, continue build over like 6 or 7 years. And Coventry are on that road if they can continue it. Bristol City fascinate me because they're not really a typical example of a playoff team in that kind of snuck in there on 68 points. Obviously, Liam Manning's gone out, Gerhard Struber's now in. But you don't see, you know, they were the sum of their parts. They were an evenly distributed 11 in terms of talent. And there's not a Gyökeres or a Harmer or an Ahmedhodzic or a Akpom or an Archer, thinking back to that Middlesbrough team that Coventry beat in the semis a couple of years ago. I don't foresee massive outs, but I also don't foresee massive spending as well. I think we might see a bit of jiggery-pokery. Adam Randell is in. Undisclosed, that says, from Plymouth. That's a good signing, isn't it? Ready to go. He scored loads of key goals, didn't he, for Argyle? Only 24 as well. I'd imagine that's a couple of million, isn't it? Yu Hirakawa, has that been made permanent now? Looks like it. from Japan. Gardner Hickman's completed his move to Birmingham. Maybe that pays for Randell. I don't know. You tell me. But I don't think it'll be heartbreakingly churny for Bristol City. But they've got the caveat there that there's a new manager in. I don't know. Who are the most saleable assets there? Twine, Mehmeti and a Knight? Don't know. Could Knight go to one of the parachute teams? Possibly. Like to keep hold of him. But yeah, Mr. Lansdowne is quite pragmatic. Bit of a spendthrift in recent seasons. So let me know. Those are your playoff losers. How do you think they're going to trade this summer? Let's take on more fluid. Although it's cooled down here in Britain and beautiful Bedfordshire. Here are the remaining teams in your top 10 from last season. Blackburn Rovers, fair play to Venky's. I always kind of forecast the eventual trend down and, problems for Blackburn and bottom six and finished 7th last year, didn't they? And they've moved Sydney Tavares, a midfielder in from Portugal, €2 million, says transfer mark. Dion Deneve, again. Let's be grown up and open-minded about pronunciation. People from different places pronounce stuff differently, guys. Try and process that in your head and not get cross if I don't say words the way you particularly like it. $750,000 left midfield, it says there from Belgium. Is there big assets going out of Blackburn? What happened with... There was a couple of contract holdouts, wasn't there? Tyrese Dolan. There's a couple of good youngsters in there as well. They always put youngsters in fairly early, Blackburn. So they've moved. Fair play Venky's, as I said. And let's see what big Val Ishmael builds there. Millwall have fascinatingly moved to a kind of European recruitment style. We obviously had Casper De Noor. Everyone's very excited about Ivanovic as well. Fleming was the poster boy for that. Did they get money for Fleming now? Does that go through now? Again, I've got no idea how these deals are structured. It says €8.3 million, but I don't know whether they got some of that up front in terms of a loan fee or whether that's already been dripped in again. None of us really probably know other than the Millwall CEOs and higher-ups there. So, yeah, gone are the days. I can see who's going there. Watmore, Hutchinson, Murray Wallace, George Saville. Some classic Millwall early championship. Neil Harris, Gary Rowett sort of players in there who are going to be on their way out. Alex Neil tends to build on intensity, doesn't he? We've seen with sort of Norwich and Stoke latterly. So, I'd like to see another Ivanovic type signing. But they're fairly well stocked already, Millwall, and I'd be fairly optimistic ahead of next season. Let's talk West Brom, where it does feel a bit of a new broom and a bit of a end of era type thing for West Brom, who have had to contend with a few things. We had obviously relegation, then they tried to leverage the parachute payments, couldn't do it, and I think the tactic in the second year, and Steve Bruce was there, they went for the big free agents and took Jed Wallace and John Swift and tried to kind of maybe invest in salary there and signing on fees rather than drop big transfer fees. Takeover obviously happened as well last season. Corberon went in the middle of last season. Mowbray didn't work. So we're now starting this season and it's Ryan Mason in and all of that background. So it feels like we're going to have a new look West Brom, doesn't it? And Mason Holgate out on loan. Swift, Dejan Garner, Ajayi. And Dejan Garner and Ajayi go back to the promotion, don't they? Under Slaven Bilic. And Swift obviously is a holdout from that last throw of the dice from the previous ownership with the year 2 parachute money. And the first bold statement here, Nat Phillips, who seems to have been around for 100 years, but he's 28. Always kind of saw him as a Liverpool youngster coming through, and looks like they've paid €3.5 million for Nat Phillips. So that's the first piece of the jigsaw there. at West Brom. There are assets in there, though. DK, big money went on him, and he's now fit again. Madja can score goals, obviously, at championship level. Wallace is still in there. So there's enough to build around. Mollenby is solid championship. And if they're spending €3 million on a centre-back, I'd think we might see some kind of push with Ryan Mason. And certainly he should be allowed to build his team, bearing in mind we're now really saying goodbye in part to the Corberon stuff, but mainly the parachute era there, the back end there under Steve Bruce and the like when West Brom were relegated. So, yeah, exciting to see what they build there with Ryan Mason. And Middlesbrough, we think, are going to be building under Rob Edwards. I say this year after year about Steve Gibson. I say fair play like I did to Venkis. He always pushes, doesn't he? In terms of an owner there, Gibson tries to stick with the FFP stuff, doesn't go crazy, and always allows players and players to come in and managers to have a little bit of a spend. I will say the Latte Lath sale, that's a problem in the middle of last season. But does that mean that Boro have had the income already, so the books are set and they can have a go this summer? Dyke's still out on a free. Georges Guitau out on a free. Never really troubled the first team, didn't he? Some good loan players, though, in terms of Ben Doak. Ryan Giles will be not there last season. Illing Jr., Ian Acho. Did either of them really work out? Ian Acho certainly didn't. So I'd imagine Rob Edwards hasn't been announced yet, and we're just waiting for that deal, which we expect to be completed. But would you be surprised to see Boro dropping a bit of cash on a couple of players? The issue is, will they have to sell Finn Azaz, Hayden Hackney, Aidan Morris? Those they would seem to be the big high ticket prices. They won't be scared to do it. I think Hackney might get bid for this summer, and that's going to be, I think they'll be able to get like 8, 10, 12 million for him, won't they? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But it's normally exciting for Middlesbrough, isn't it? They normally have a good crack at it, don't they? That is your top 10 from last season. And we will move on to the middle order here. Swansea, Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich and Watford. I think cause to be excited at a couple of these. Cause for concern definitely at one. And who the hell knows with the other. Let's start with Swansea, where I think there's a little bit of cause for excitement here. I know it's been a kind of slow death by 1,000 cuts since Swansea have been relegated, and gradually things have just shrunk, haven't they, in terms of asset base and star players and whatnot. And obviously playoff semi-defeat under Cooper. Where was Graham Potter? He was like 11th or something, wasn't he? Playoff final defeat under Cooper as well. And, then the parachute payments are gone and we move into this new era where a few things have been tried out. And Luke Williams out towards the end of, or maybe 2/3 through last season. And Alan Sheehan came in. They did finish strongly. Is Alan Sheehan going to be a good manager, or is he just one of those guys that picks it up as a caretaker, gets it moving, and then ultimately doesn't work long term? I don't know. We're going to find out next season. But they've been moving, haven't they? I know Harry Darling has gone out, and that's on a free as well. That'd be quite painful because I think they paid good money for him. But Cameron Burgess, obviously I love from my Ipswich Town point of view. Ricardo Santos, I've seen play for Bolton, is massive. And how do I say this politely? If he's put in a situation to accentuate his strengths and hide his weaknesses, he's a good centre-back. Just don't expect him to be knocking it about. Although he was working with Ian Evatt at Bolton, wasn't he? So maybe it'll be good. Maybe I'm being unfair to Santos. I just found him a bit erratic when I saw him in League One a couple of seasons ago watching Ipswich. Bobby Wales in. But what about this? Zidane Inusa So €6 million here that Swans have dropped on a 23-year-old left winger. And we've obviously had a few kind of bit similar to Millwall exotic signings coming in over the last couple of transfer windows. So look, if Sheehan works out and this window is anything to go by, that they're dropping money, then it could be fun for Swans. Could they make a move from 11th up towards those playoffs once again? We shall see. Sheffield Wednesday, man, you've just got to be so worried now, haven't you? Because Sheffield Wednesday will not be doing any transfer business, will they? Because they've got a transfer embargo. So we don't know the real minutiae. It's a fee restriction, but across like windows all the way up to the January window in 2027. So whatever they're doing isn't going to be a lot. They can sell players, obviously, and I'm looking here. Ihekwe, Valentin, Hatsue, Armstrong, Hamer, Johnson, Wilkes, all gone. Sissoko's loan has ended. We don't know whether Danny Roll will be there. We don't know what Mr. Chansiri's up to. So, look, let's just play the worst case scenario and we'll cross our fingers for the Wednesday fans. Let's just assume this window is going to be hell for Sheffield Wednesday. And they're not really going to be able to do much in the way of deals, and anything of any strength, whatever there is there, is going to be bid for, whether they have to sell or not. They're not in administration. They're just under an embargo. So it's not like they have to accept every bid for every player, but who knows what the hell Mr. Chansiri is going to do next. And a lot of Wednesday fans are not optimistic that Danny Roll is going to be there. So I'm sorry to paint such a bleak picture for Wednesday, but let's do that and let's just hope it's better. And, you know, something good can happen. Best case scenario, Chansiri sells in like 2 weeks or something. New owners come in, slate's wiped clean, embargo disappears, Danny Roll stays and is given some money, and away goes Sheffield Wednesday. But yeah, those are your two binaries. Let's hope it's more. No, that one. I pointed that you. I'm mirrored. I can't see which hand I'm doing here. Right. Norwich City. I'm going to be as bold as to say I am the most excited about what has happened so far if I were a Norwich fan. I like what they've done so far, with the gigantic caveat that they're probably going to have to sell one or two of Sargent, Sainz and Nunes. But it looks like they're already prepping for that and they're accepting that. And Norwich have traded really well over the years, haven't they? You know, they sell at a really high ticket price. People trust the players that they're going to get from Norwich, negotiate well, you know, have contracts set out so they can maximise value. They're just a pretty good example since that first Stuart Webber run where, okay, he was blessed with the youngsters, Aarons, Lewis and Godfrey, who they made a fortune on, didn't they? And who was the winger? Cantwell as well. But they made some brilliant signings as well. When you know, I think if you sign Buendia and Pookie and that's all the deals you do for the next 5 years, say, you're onto a winner there with those two. Extraordinary window there. And they've kind of managed to ride it out over years and years now. I know they're without the parachute payments now, but still, I think they get the back end of the Johnny Rowe payment from Marseille. And yeah, they're going to make a lot of money out of Sargent, Sainz, Nunes, whoever is sold. And Liam Manning's in, which is a good managerial hire in my humble opinion. Goalkeeper situation needs sorting. That was Angus Gunn and who was the reserve guy? Who didn't do well, did he? The Millwall guy, Long. But Grimshaw has come in. So has Molden. Not sure they've already got the first choice goalkeeper there. I think they're just stocking up there and there'll be one more. Darling, I think, is a great signing on a free. Jacob Wright is a 19-year-old who's come through the Man City Academy for couple of million, it says 2.7 million euros. So I would imagine that even though you might lose Sargent, who's just guaranteed goals at championship level, possibly Sainz, who in the autumn last year, I think we would all agree that was the best performing player in the whole division, wasn't he? I think there could be some exciting incomings as well at Norwich. They should be able to sign a few, given what I've just said, for decent money and have no issues there with PSR because they're a well-run club, Norwich. So, could be interesting. Looked like they could challenge the playoffs at times last season. I think that might be more tangible this season if the window pans out how I expect it might. And if Liam Manning, who should be an upgrade on Johannes Hoth Torap. Watford, the Watford fans are telling me, Ben, Mr. Pozzo is not concentrating so much on Udinese and will now concentrate more on Watford. I hope you're right, Watford fans. And I'm sounding sarcastic. I just always have that in the back of my head that when I'm expecting Mr. Pozzo to do something good, he does something silly. And, you know, we've got a new manager in there. But again, I'm not being disrespectful. That's normally the case at Watford at the start of every season, isn't it? Sierralta out. I quite liked him, actually. But, yeah, Tom Cleverley didn't seem to fancy him massively in terms of a first-team regular starter last year. A few free transfers in. Baxter in goal. Is that just depth? Boller, I think he'll probably play, won't he? Samson Spor from Turkey. But where was Boller? Charlton and Boro before, so he'll be championship ready. Hector Cipriano should be fun. I remember the very first show I did on ITV. I remember Hector Cipriano scoring and I shouted across the production table, someone tell me about Hector Cipriano, and Joby McAnuff put his hand up and said, I worked with him at Leyton Orient. I'll tell you all about him, and I've kept his eye on him, my eye on him ever since, and he got moved from Orient to Peterborough. Now he's coming through to Watford. So this is a lovely rise with Hector Cipriano up the leagues, and I wish him well. I love to see a player work their way up, and then he's 24. Can he get to the Premier League with Watford or with somebody else? I assume there'll be some trading done. Will there be some trading done with Udinese at some point and some money come in? I don't know. It does feel like Watford are probably, though, at their weakest squad-wise since the relegation, which would make sense. God, I remember seeing Watford play on opening day a couple of years ago, and they had Emmanuel Dennis, João Pedro and Ismail Assar up front. So, yeah, it's obviously a bit of a drop-off from those three, isn't it? But let's see what happens with Mr. Pozzo and what's the new manager's name? Petzolano? Sorry. I'm not entirely there yet. We'll get there. It's the close season, man. I'm picking up pace here. Okay. Here are the remainder of the sides. Is it fair to call them the survivors? QPR, 56, 7 points. Yeah, let's call them the survivors here. Rangers, Pompey, Oxford, Stoke, Derby, Preston, Hull. And a few of them would have aspirations not to be mere survivors, but to work their way up the table. I'm thinking of you, Hull and Stoke. Derby? Talk about Derby in a minute. QPR have appointed Julien Stéphan as their manager. There's another piece on that you can check out elsewhere on the channel if you're a Rangers fan. Want to hear my take. Who's gone out? Kenneth Paul. I miss him, actually. I thought he was all right. Fullback there. Shepherd, keeper. Lucas Anderson, who flew the flag for men with long hair, didn't he? Dembele in permanently. Is that just a loan being completed, I guess? So not a lot happening there at Rangers. What I will say, though, they had a couple of good contract signings, didn't they? Jimmy Dunn and Sam Field both signed their contracts. So some cause for optimism there. They've been, we've spoken about Millwall doing it, trying to exploit foreign markets and doing a fair job. We still talk about Ilias Chair, don't we? Although he had some injury issues at the end of last season and some off-pitch issues at the start of last season. He's still I wouldn't put him in cheat code category, but he's a big difference maker if he's ready to go at championship level. So, I'm open-minded and unsure what we get from QPR in the window here. But a new manager looks like he's got a bit about him at his best. Pompey, they did great last season, didn't they? Have they signed another Aussie? Adrian Segacic has come in from Sydney FC. They signed a load of Aussies last year, although the one that was really good, I forget his name, got a horrible injury quite soon in, so hopefully we'll see him back. There's probably a couple of assets as well. I'm sure Murphy's agent will get some calls. I know he's a bit older and not the young whippersnapper that came through at Norwich, but he had a great season last year. And you wonder whether someone might just test the water and say, look, for a season, get him in there, he'll make things happen. Bishop? Would anybody bid for Bishop? I don't know. Proved himself, didn't he? Worked well. So yeah, let's see if Pompey can keep building. Not going to be spending tons of money there, John Massinio. But I think they might do a few bits now. They've settled and, I mean, in theory, they didn't push the boat out massively last season and they should be richer after a year in the Championship. So yeah, I would expect something similar and a hopeful trend up in the improvement of the squad. Oxford came up with Pompey last season. Who's gone out there? Voltman, Bennett, McEachran, Finley. I suppose Gary Rowett builds his squad now. This will sound disrespectful. I don't mean it to be. Gary Rowett has always signed players he already knows, hasn't he? We've seen him at various clubs now. Can I do Gary Rowett's whole career? Burton, Birmingham, Stoke, Derby, Millwall, Birmingham again for a cup of tea, Oxford. Hugely experienced, but yeah, I'm not imagining that. Someone write me a list in the comments of players that Gary Rowett's gone back to his former club for and taken. You'd imagine there is a fair number, isn't there? You'd also imagine Oxford, in terms of budget, will be right down towards the bottom in terms of what they can do. Would they sell anyone? Tyler Goodrum? I don't know. But I do think that players will... who's the Polish guy? Placheta. I think players who have been in the Championship who are maybe out of favour will look at Oxford and think, I can go there, get played, and, you know, build back up at Championship level. I think Hellick was a brilliant signing as well. So, yeah, maybe they'll continue to innovate there. I don't want to say on the cheap, that's not fair, but, you know, budget-wise, they're punching already to have finished 17th. I bet they didn't have the 17th biggest budget in the league last year, did they? So, yeah, that's my prediction for Oxford. Let's see some familiar faces to Gary Rowett going in there. Stoke. What is going to happen at Stoke with Mark Robins, who likes a certain type of player, a secure guarantee, doesn't he? Sorba Thomas has gone in. He's only 26, been around for years. Remember Sorba Thomas? Was one of the key guys that got Huddersfield to the playoff final. Brilliant set play taker, wasn't he, under Corberon? He's gone in. Some questions on attitude. I don't know the guy, but yeah, hopefully he can get his head screwed on because he's a really good player. Where did he come from? Like Boreham Wood or something from Huddersfield. A few outs. Thompson, Gooch, Rose, Stevens. You'd imagine what Mark Robins won't want to do, though, is what every Stoke manager has done, where they come in, 9 players go out, 9 players go in, they build a new team, it doesn't work, they get sacked, and then the next manager does the same thing all over again. So I think they need to try and bank what they've got there and build gradually. But I suppose Michael O'Neill did that a little bit, and I think Mark Robins... it's kind of some similarities in the whole statesman-like, safe pair of hands, sensible manager that Mark Robins probably is. So, yeah, maybe it might be reasonably quiet at Stoke. Big assets, Wouter Berger. They might get some bids for him. Million Manhoof. I don't know. Will they be selling? You tell me. Derby. What are Derby going to do under John Eustace? I mean, the first word will be improve, because I think he's really good. And he's been really good at every club he's been at in the Championship. They're heavily linked with Carlton Morris, which I think would be a really good signing, wouldn't it? I'm smiling as I say it. I think Morris and Eustace might work well. I mean, he's a right whinger, isn't he, Morris, when you see him play? But he's horrible to play against, big and strong, and gets his elbows in and scores goals. Plenty for Luton, not maybe last season, but in the promotion season and in the Premier League as well. Plenty going out, but this feels like just clearing the decks of the players that got them up from League One with Paul Warne and some survivors there. Bradley, Mendes-Lang, Barkhuizen, Fornar, Washington, Luthra, Hendrick, Peters, Roof, all out. So I think there should be some money, and I think they should be able to do something. And remember, they spent a bit after Cashin went out, didn't they, on Scandinavian centre-back whose name I'm forgetting. So he should be of interest as well. And I'd be optimistic if I was a Derby fan. I think it could be a fun window. And I think they're going to finish higher than 19th next season. Especially if Morris is the first one in the door and it's a couple of £1 million. That sends out a good signal of, okay, here we go, Derby. Here we go. Speaking of here we go, Preston are having a whale of a time this window. We thought the levy was going to finally break for North End last season, and they cascaded down the table, didn't they? Great run in the FA Cup. Was that distracting? Is that a cliche? I don't know, but they could have gone down. And in fact, I predicted on the last day of the season that they would go down, that Bristol City would beat them and results would go the other way. But they got a really good draw, didn't they, at Bristol City? And they survived. And I tell you what, we've mentioned new eras and new teams. It feels like Sam always jokes about it on the Check-In podcast, that Preston, we've kind of known for about 3 years what most of the team is going to be. But out already, Ledson, Stewart, Best, Woodman, who was a real mainstay stalwart, Bauer, Taylor. Reese is an interesting one because I think there's a player in there, but obviously his race is run at Preston. I think he'll get picked up by another Championship team. We'll see if he scores goals. We'll see if he scores against Preston next season for another Championship team. There you go. There's a bold prediction. But already 5 in, which is they are the biggest movers so far. They haven't spent anything on fees yet. Obviously, be signing on fees and whatnot. But 4 free transfers and the loan signing. Thierry Small, which I like. When we were previewing League One playoffs last year, Sam picked him out as a tricky player. I think like left-footed right back or something. Nathan Jones had him. Charlton fans will know better, but definitely something there. Paul Valentin played sort of right back, or we see him get put right midfield in terms of in front of a right back by Danny Roll there. And look, players that have worked under Danny Roll, he's going to come from Sheffield Wednesday, have been well coached, haven't they? We know that, and Valentin knows the league. Dan Iverson, that's a good signing. He was at Preston before on loan from Leicester, so he knows the club, he knows the level. He'll slot straight in, I have no doubts about that. Jordan Thompson, again, I don't want to be unkind to Preston here. It's very Preston, isn't it? It's no thrills, players who know what they're doing and know the level. You look for the special sauce. Can you see it? I don't know. But those 4 definitely. Is the special sauce, though, Dan Jebison, who will be very well known to Paul Heckingbottom, who probably gave him his debut, did he? At Sheffield United? Pass. Fact check me on that one. But I remember Jebison being massively highly rated, and didn't he score a goal when he was super young in the Premier League for the Blades? 21, on loan from Bournemouth. Can this guy put it together now? Can he do it? I want to see Dan Jebison start over 40 games for Preston. I want Paul Heckingbottom to say, right, mate, you've been around now. It's time. Let's do this. Let's go. I'm going to play you every week. You're my guy. You're my key striker. Score me some goals. Can he get 10? 15? Can he get 20 goals if he plays all season at Preston? I don't know. But we are getting a new team here. That it feels like the Alex Neil, Ryan Lowe. We can go back to Alex Neil with a few of those players. Ryan Lowe era is ending and the Paul Heckingbottom era is beginning. And can Preston And I apologise, Preston fans, for saying it, but it does feel like a sense of purgatory and boredom a little bit. I've had it under Marcus Evans at Ipswich, where you're just in the middle and you don't do a lot. And it's like, where's our star player? Can we do what Coventry did and bring a couple of stars through and all of a sudden have some money to spend for PSR and all of that? But yeah, they've made a move, Preston, for sure. Hull, who again have a new manager, Rakirovic, I think is the pronunciation. And I have no doubt, I'm confident to say, Mr. Ilachali will spend some money in this window. They might have to shift one or two out. I'm not entirely sure who that would be now, because over the years they've obviously managed to sell Ferjani and Greaves to Ipswich, where they made a lot of money last summer. Obviously, before then, with not very good consequences, Bowen and Rosicky, which got relegated, really, didn't it, in the middle of that season under Grant McCann. That wasn't Mr. Ilachali, though. That was Mr. Alarm. Remember him? I bet the whole fans do. But what have we got here? It already says Gustavo Puerta. I think that's a permanent being converted. It says €3.5 million, by the way. What is he, Colombian central midfielder? No, the central midfielder is Reda I can't pronounce that. Loai. Again, what is he, Moroccan? Different people from different places pronounce words differently. And we try our best on here. Dylan Phillips, keeper in on loan. Oh, not on loan, on a free. And some releases already. Cynic, Fleming, Jones, Pedro. And some loans going back there. Amrabat, Lowe, Tatala. Knowing Mr. Ilachali, surely it'll be a fun and games window. But yeah, just tell me in the chat, Hull fans, who's going to go out to raise the money and what is the PSR position? That would be my only contention if there's no Greaves or Ferjani or whoever to bank on. But he'll go for it aggressively. That's his nature, isn't it, Mr. Ilachali? Speaking of going for it aggressively, let's talk about Birmingham and Wrexham. And Charlton as well. Let's not miss Charlton out there. Our promoted teams from League One. And let's be quite frank, and this is not just me going YouTubey. I do feel like this is the case. We're expecting fireworks from Birmingham and Wrexham, aren't we? I'm sitting here rubbing my hands going, what are they going to do? Now, I don't want to contradict myself because I did appear on the excellent Keep Right On podcast with Brian and Alex. And I said the smartest thing that Birmingham can do is ride out as much they can, the 111 points, the brilliant season, the momentum, the pattern of play, and the work they did last season. But that does not mean they cannot be aggressive in the transfer market. And it doesn't mean they can't be aggressive in August and July in the transfer market. And I use the example of Amari Hutchinson from Ipswich, where they got a player in, a kind of elite loan player from Chelsea. And, okay, he was dripped in very carefully during the year. At the end of the season, he was Ipswich's best player, and he was a regular starter for the last 10, 15 games. And then Ipswich dropped the money, 18, 20 million or whatever it was, at the end of the season upon promotion. It's very presumptuous that Birmingham are on the same rough route as Ipswich are. They certainly outperformed Ipswich and everybody else in history in League One. So I'd love to see Birmingham do something clever. And if they've got money to spend, let's see it go into one really good player and maybe one really good loan signing that gives them an option to buy it if they do get promoted, or they do have a good season and maybe they're in the Championship again and they can drop the money. But do I expect fireworks like we saw last summer at Birmingham? No, and nor should they, and probably nor can they, because obviously the PSR rules are now different in terms of owner investment. You can do a bit more in League One, whereas you've got the hard caps, haven't you? So I think fireworks at Birmingham could look like, one nice chunky signing, a really good loan signing or two, and then maybe a smattering. And look, the likes of Oxford and Pompey and QPR and Sheffield Wednesday would love to be able to just bring in 3 or 4 players for $750,000, $1 million, a free transfer. Birmingham can do all of that, but they must not disrupt the 111-point team that is coming up. And a lot of what they need is already there. It says Phil Neumann free transfer, that's just completing. Gardner Hickman, that's completing. And Samstead as well. I think they were all already there. So that's just spending money to keep your team as good as it was last year. Ramel Donovan out to Brentford. There you go. They banked some money as well. Lucas Jutkovic retired. By the way, what a servant he has been. I would have loved Ipswich to sign him when they sold Daryl Murphy and Mick McCarthy was the manager. Different times. Let's talk about Wrexham, who are actually off and running. And I love the first big signing that Wrexham have made. Ryan Hardy. What a perfect signing that is. Obviously, Plymouth got relegated. But up and down the league, let me say this, all the squads would probably benefit from having a Ryan Hardy around. Hear me out. Even the parachute teams, if it was going to be, this says €825,000, even if it was squad depth, this guy scores goals at championship level and he can do that really hard job where a striker is on the pitch, they might be up front on their own and they've got to run and set the tempo and set the press from a defensive point of view for their team. And Ryan Hardy, not only been a good goal scorer, has been very, very good at that. We've spoken a lot already about Wrexham's style of play. And are they going to stick with pragmatism, a really good defensive record? And if it is Ryan Hardy needs to run the channels before he scores any goals, then that is just a really, really good signing. Some players out. Some big names actually out of Wrexham. Foster Hall, Adam Davies, Stephen Fletcher, age 38, Mark Howard, Paul Mullin, who has been a bit of a poster boy, hasn't he, for the Wrexham journey. He was the guy that got them, scored the goals to get them, from National League through to League One last season. Wasn't relied on really. They got Sam Smith there. And they've now added Ryan Hardy. But let's be fair, within the scope of PSR, we are expecting fireworks from Wrexham. And this is where I don't feel the same as I feel about Birmingham. I think they should go for it. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if we do 6, 7, 8 players who've all got ideas on getting into the first team and squad build. And yeah, they're gonna make a loss, haven't they? And I just don't see them selling anybody. I know Cleworth is probably the sellable asset there, but no, I think Wrexham will make a significant investment and try and build themselves a team to, start challenging in the Championship. And it will be exciting, as it's been for Wrexham over 4 or 5 years now. Finally, Charlton Athletic, who are going to be the poor relations in terms of the Championship promoted teams, but got a good manager, Charlton, who knows the level. Got a bit of momentum, haven't they? Cherry Small going out. That's probably a bit annoying, isn't it? Chuck Sanike, Dean Bizanis, Danny Hilton. It's a Nathan Jones classic. Tenai Watson, Aaron Henry. So they cleared out a bit in terms of squad. Sonny Carey in on a free. That's a good sign-in. And he scored 11 goals or something for Blackpool in League One last season. And, right, let me try and say this in the nicest way. Nathan Jones is the type of manager where you can take League One players, and because what he does is quite extreme in terms of the running, the pressing, they can, like Luton did, be the sum of their parts and rise up the division without necessarily the need. Because I can see what people are going to say, and I think they might do a few more like that, where they go back to League One and try and take the best players they played against last season. And I can see people make the argument, yeah, Ben, that's a good League One team, literally. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. But with this manager and with what they'll do with the running data and the pressing, that can make the difference. So I don't expect Charlton to be... I mean, who are Charlton going to be competing in terms of signings with? Is it probably Oxford and Pompey and Preston? Sheffield Wednesday under embargo and can only do threes. I think it's those teams, really, isn't it? There's going to be a little battle where teams are going to be looking at League One, Championship experience on loans and frees, and doing whatever they can do with fees into the bargain. But Nathan Jones is a difference maker there. Wow. Thank you so much. Did you get to the end? Put me a comment now saying, Ben, I stayed to the end. I heard everything you had to say about the Championship transfer window and what has been going on. Get your views in the comments. Again, admin. It was coming up for 20 past 10 when we started it, so it's now coming up to 20 past 11 on Tuesday morning. So if deals are done, look, the window moves fast, and unless you do your video at midnight and put it up at 6 a.m, you will always miss something. So look, if new players go through, we'll include them in the next video. Again, don't get emotional and bogged down about transfer fees. We don't ever really know, do we? And even if we do know, we don't know how they're distributed through the books over the years. So let's talk about the players and what we think they can do for the teams. And I would invite you, let me know. Let me know on players that have arrived at your teams. Let me know how you think they will do. And I genuinely mean that. Help me out. It's really hard. There's 24 teams. And I've got enough humility to say I don't know as much about your club as you do, if you support them. I really don't. But my job is hopefully to cover the whole league. You don't know as much about the whole league as I do after years and years of doing this, in theory. If you do, start a YouTube channel and I'll bloody watch it. But yeah, help me out. Let me know what role you think players are gonna play, and who you're excited about, who you're scared about losing, and who you have lost that is possibly going to annoy you. Also, maybe some predictions as well. What sort of a window do you think your team is going to have? And if you want to correct mine, then feel free. Let me know how you see it going down there in the comments. Bit quiet over the weekend. I know it was a Q&A on Friday, wasn't it? And then a lot of clips. I was busy with music work and whatnot. So we should kick in nicely now with a fair bit of content. But if you do want to catch up with the Q&A, it's another long one, I know, but do get involved up there. And in the close season, we can go a bit off-piste, and I get to talk about fatherhood and music as well, which is a great privilege that you guys want to listen and want to know in the first place. I want to know about transfers. Get in the comments, and we will see you very soon.